Today we're reviewing for the Chapter 2 test on Thursday. This is for the geometry review. First, we're going to make a conjecture about the next term in the sequence, so we need to think of the pattern to make the conjecture. So if we go from 5 to 10, there's a couple ways to do that. You can either subtract 15 to get negative 10, or you can multiply by negative 2. So we're going to try each one. If we subtract negative 10 minus 15, that's not going to give us 20. So let's try to multiply negative 10 by negative 2, which will give us 20. So the pattern is multiply by negative 2. So if we keep going, that would give us negative 40 times negative 2, which gives us positive 80. And we multiplied by negative 2. So the conjecture would be to multiply by negative 2. Here we're going to look at the sentence and we're going to find a counterexample. So it's telling us that Mn equals Np, and it's assuming then N is a midpoint of Np. So to find a counterexample, we need to draw something that would not make N be in the middle of M and P, but instead M and N being equal to N and P, where N is not in the middle. So it's a vertical line instead of a horizontal line for Mn, and then Np would be a different type of line. So we'd label Mn equal to Np, but in this case N would not be the midpoint. Here we're going to say whether this is true or false. So we need to think of the truth value of each statement and put it together. So we have the square root of 25 is greater than negative 5. So that is true because 5 is greater than negative 5. And then we have or, and we think of the other statement, 3 is less than or equal to 3. Well, that is also true. So we have true or true, which would make the entire statement true. Here we're thinking about the statement for P and the statement for Q. We don't really need to know what they are, but we know that one is true and one is false. Then we're asked to think of the negated P and the negated Q. So that would make P false and Q true. So if we think of false and true, that would have to make this entire statement false. Here we need to write the statement in if-then form. So all chickens have 2 wings. So think about if you have a chicken, then it has 2 wings. Or if it is a chicken, it has 2 wings. The next statement, we're going to identify the conclusion of the statement. So if you have an if-then statement, the conclusion is going to be the then part. As simple as that. Here we need to write the inverse of the statement. So the statement is if 2 lines are parallel to a third line, then they are parallel to each other. The inverse doesn't change the order of anything. It just adds a not to each statement. So if 2 lines are not parallel to a third line, then they are not parallel to each other. Here we need to use the law of detachment to write a valid conclusion for the given information. So they usually repeat the if part in the second statement, and then we say the then part for our conclusion when we're thinking of the law of detachment. So the first statement is, if a football team wins the Big Ten championship, then they will play in the Rose Bowl. So if the next statement is about the if part, then we can conclude the then part. So the next statement says Ohio State wins the Big Ten championship, and that is a football team, and it's winning the Big Ten championship, so we can say that Ohio State played in the Rose Bowl. Here we need to use the law of syllogism. This is kind of like the transitive property where you have three statements and then you take out the middle, which is gonna be your conclusion. So you have, if today is Thursday, then Amy is off work. So the first statement, today is Thursday. Second statement, Amy is off work. Notice they repeat, Amy is off work. And then the third statement, she will go to the gym to work out. So the conclusion would be, if today is Thursday, cross out the middle, then she will go to the gym to work out. Here we just need to name the operation that transforms 4x minus 2 equals 7x plus 7 to be 4x equals 7x plus 9. So it looks like we took the 2 and brought it over to be on the right side. We needed to add the 2 because 7 plus 2 would be 9. So the operation would be addition. And then to solve for the value of x, we need to keep going. So we have the 4x and the 7x that we need to combine. We need to bring the 7x to be with the 4x. And that gives us negative 3x equals 9. And we need to solve by dividing by negative 3. So x would be negative 3. Here we just need to fill in the rest of this proof. So we started with the statement x over 3 plus 1 equals negative 4. So they're saying the solution needs to be x equals negative 15. So we started by solving the problem. We needed to subtract 1 on both sides first. Then we got x over 3 equals negative 5. And then if we keep going, notice they are multiplying by 3 on both sides here, so the reasoning would be the multiplication property. Here we need to think about what type of angles 1 and 2 are to solve for x. And then we need to find angle 1. So 1 and 2 are actually vertical angles, which makes them equal to each other. So we're going to put 5x plus 20 equals 3x plus 80. And we're solving for x. So we need to combine like terms. And we get 2x equals 60, and then we divide by 2 to get x equals 30, but they're asking for the measure of angle 1, so we need to plug in 30 into 5x plus 20. So that would give us 150 plus 20, which is 170. Here we're going to prove another point. We're given that BD bisects angles ABC, or angle ABC. So if something bisects, or a segment bisects an angle, that's going to make each angle on each side of the segment equal, or congruent. It also tells us that angle 1 and angle 3 are complementary, which means they need to add up to 90. So that makes them congruent. And then angles 2 and 4 are complementary, which they need to add up to 90, which makes that congruent. We need to prove that angles 1 and angles 2 are congruent. So they started with our givens, and then we need to prove that angle 3 is congruent to angle 4. We can say that just because it says BD bisects it, so that's the definition of an angle bisector. And then angle 1 being congruent to angle 2, all we did was substitute there. Here we're going to name the definition, property, postulate, or theorem that justifies each statement. So if x is the midpoint of ZW, then ZX equals XW. So that's talking about the midpoint theorem. If AB equals CD, then CD equals AB. All they did was switch what's on each side of the equal sign, so that is called the symmetric property. Here we have PQ equals RS, so PQ plus AB equals RS plus AB. These are segments and they're adding, so this is the segment addition postulate. Here we have AB is congruent to CD and CD is congruent to EF. Notice they took out the CD, so now it's AB is congruent to EF, so that's the transitive property. If two angles form a linear pair, then they are supplementary angles. We need to think about what the property is for this, and that is the supplement theorem. And then we have the measure of angle A equals the measure of angle B, so angle A is congruent to angle B. That's just the definition of congruent angles. And that concludes our Chapter 2 test review. So you can see a lot of these were done in Jeopardy over the last couple of days. So if you're starting to feel comfortable, or you feel comfortable after completing Jeopardy and also completing the video, then you should feel comfortable to do well on the test.